That has to be the loudest scream. Do you hear it? And slowest. Hi up there. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, that was, let's do that again. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and it was a joy to be in a little circle in the lounge with some really wonderful students and staff. But we're going to have a wonderful circle here, although it doesn't feel like a circle because we're in these traditional classroom seats. We will have great dialogue. Is the music intended to continue to play? It's beautiful, though. I didn't know if it was running up someone's battery. So before we begin, though, I want to thank St. Mary's College students, faculty, and staff for inviting me to be here. I'm sure you had other choices. Thank you so much for having me here. And I want to personally thank Ryan Lamberton for spending time on the phone with me to tell me all about the real St. Mary's College. He did a good job. He just told me the truth, and I'm not poking fun at Ryan or the college when I say that. When I ask questions about how many faculty of color there are, he was able to say, well, this is what's true. He was also able to tell me about all the wonderful initiatives that are happening on this campus and have been happening. And it's quite a shift from the St. Mary's of the early days. And what I got is that there is still some work to do. But what is that work? And what is leadership? And how do we go about it? So before we go further, I'd like you to do something that will be your own gift to our world. And I mean it. So right where you're sitting, would you put whatever's in your hands, just put it down for a second. You can pick it right back up. And I'd like you to send the power of your love and your kindness to those who are suffering. It doesn't matter who you think about. This is you personally. Send your love and kindness to whoever is suffering. Here on this campus, beyond the campus in the cities nearby, in your family, in the neighborhood you grew up in the state of California. In the United States. In the rest of North America. And in every country that you can imagine in the world, send your love and kindness. Don't overthink. Just send it. Now, if you will, bring some of that loving kindness back to you. It's yours anyway. So anywhere in your body, your mind, your spirit, you are suffering, let it soothe you. And remember to breathe. When you like, you can bring your attention back to this room and consider what you have just given to the world. Now, if you will, even if you think you know everybody, please turn to someone, don't pounce on them, and introduce yourself. And you might want to say where you sent this love and this kindness that always exists in you, always. You can do that now. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone, we don't need a mic for this, but would anybody like to shout out what it felt like to do that, starting with the backmost rows where people tend to hide? Just shout something out of, it was what? I didn't hear. Awesome. Generous of you? Generative. Generative, yes. She did like this. Yes. Something else? Connected. We are so disconnected. Emotional. Who said that? Emotional. What country did you send your kindness to?
The closest place was here to 508 houses that were living there.
Yes, that's right.
My sister said friend was saying children of all ages
Children,
that are lost.
yes. Someone else? Informative? Did anyone send it to the country the beautiful song came from? Yeah. Yes. I could see it in your face. Yeah. Seriously, yes. It's fine for us to acknowledge who we are and where we came from, even if the world tells us not to. You know that concept of the melting pot? That always gives me the heebie-jeebies, the idea of people melting. My friend Joy DeGree says something beautiful. She said, America's a salad at best. And then she describes all the bits in the salad. I can't do it like she does, but we don't melt. We don't want to melt. We don't want to blend. We don't want to pass. All righty. So, and thank you for introducing yourselves to one another. Maybe some of you introduced yourselves to people you'd never met before, didn't know were on campus. Great. So leadership, I wanted to start with that word. What does that mean? What does leadership mean? I'll tell you, I believe today that it is the ability to follow one's own heart and to pay attention to the guidance of others and to follow what's true to you. And I also know that a leader doesn't have to have followers. Better she doesn't. A leader is just stepping up and stepping out. Can we assume together that we don't know the names of all the leaders in our world? Because we think whatever the news gives us, whatever mainstream writers give us, those are our leaders. And that isn't entirely true. Everyone in this room, what do you call this room? The Moraga room. Everyone in the Moraga room has the capacity, if you're not already, to be a leader, because you have the ability to pay attention to the guidance of your heart and to look at the guidance of others, for many of us on whose shoulders we stand, and move forward. Leaders may be all about a cause or an issue that needs support, but more importantly, a leader listens. She assesses. She humbly does her inner homework and the outer homework too. She decides to commit to that which needs her help in the moment. That which needs your help in this moment. And you're not forgetting about what needed your help in that moment or in the moments coming. But you are available to what is needed, and you don't, if you are a leader, silo what you will do and what you won't. Does that make sense? You don't box it in. Well, I'm an LGBTQIA leader. Well, does that mean that all your other coinciding identities don't come along? I'm a leader for Latino Latinas. Does that mean that all your other coinciding identities don't come along? What does it mean to be a leader and to be fully in tune with yourself as you serve the world? How do you do that? How do you act? How do you act so that you can join the hands and the ranks of people who are also serving the world in different ways without saying, I don't do that, I do this? Leadership. A leader doesn't react to the barriers she sees or hears or feels. She scales barriers, and she emotionally and spiritually knocks them down. For her, all of her identities mean something powerful and important. And she's aware of her inner power as well as the power outside herself, because she's a leader. She's aware that wherever she is, the location, the place that she's in, is a place she can serve, and there's something so much more huge that she is also serving, and that she can do more to help. For instance, a campus is a place of learning, right? Some questions? Okay. Well, a campus is a place of learning. It is a place of learning. What you are learning is up to you. How you are learning it is even up to you. Because beyond the classroom, when I went back to school long after I started, decades later. And I studied sociology because I love that it's about systems and people and how well we work together or not. And what keeps barriers in place? What keeps institutional racism in place? What keeps sexism and misogyny in place? What makes it so that we still in the year 2017, which is almost ending, so let's say 2018, live in a society that has a subset called rape culture? I know you know what I mean. Don't overthink. Don't overthink. But beyond this campus, there is an even more important community where water is not guaranteed for everyone, where food is scarce, where the idea of walking with safety is missing. Where people consider whether they leave their homes or stay inside because of sanctioned, systemic violence. Outside this campus, and perhaps within it as well, there is domestic abuse of all kinds. And outside, there are prisons and carceral sites for children and teens that don't deserve the word justice attached to their title. However, a leader knows that anger and sadness don't rule her. In her, anger is transmuted. She breathes. She breathes. And she moves forward. How do I know? Well, I've been fortunate to hear the words and be in the presence of some amazing leaders whose names would never hit the front pages of a paper and never be written about in a book. Like my grandmother, like my grandmothers, like my grandfather, who was descended directly from a freed slave. We think history is all nicely packaged up, like it is in books, decade by decade, and that it has nothing to do with us. And yet here we are at St. Mary's College, and history has everything to do with our experience of living and or working and or learning here. A global history, not just the United States history. And it is at the core of why we are the way we are with each other. It may even be why we hire the people we hire, why we outreach the students we outreach, and it may be the reason why we don't retain the people we hire and the students who come here. History. And we've been taught to dismiss the truths of history that don't touch our own lives. Wanda Johnson is a hero of mine. Do you know who she is? Does anybody, you could yell it out. Oscar Grant's mother. Do you know who Oscar Grant is? Thank goodness. Well, she started a foundation, and here's what she said. Wanda said, when I could get out of bed in the morning, I knew I had to help the families who've lost their sons and daughters to police and community violence. Can you imagine? I don't assume all of you have children, but can you imagine losing your baby? She's my hero. I met Eric Garner's mother. She's my hero. I met Michael Brown's mother, Sandra Bland's mother. I met all of these wonderful women who still don't sleep well, who can't celebrate birthdays. And it was Wanda, almost by herself, pulling together marches and protests. And then a few years later, the whole world of women turned out to march. Where were they? Where are they? Where are we? What do we do? How do we stay connected and not have silos of social justice activity? As the two sweethearts who introduced me said, when I was 20 and incarcerated, alone in a solitary cell, I took the opportunity to inquire within. I asked myself, okay, well, Ericka, you're here because the FBI and other government agencies put you here. But really, what are you meant to learn while you're here? Do you ever think like that? Here you are at this juncture in your life. What is its purpose? Why are you at that juncture? What are you meant to learn beyond a classroom? What are you meant to learn in the school of your own self? And what I came to is that, of course, this was a continuation of the treatment that had always been meted out and enforced, first for enslaved Africans, and then as a descendant, continually meted out, and to those who stood up against it, the threat to kill us by any means necessary. But I didn't die. I wasn't harmed. I was in a prison, but I was alive. What would I do with the time that I was given? And I decided, as you said, to meditate. I don't know why. I just knew I didn't want to be under anybody's control. First, I had to figure out what was controlling me from the inside out. And then I would decide how I would live my life and how I would serve, even if it meant that I would remain in prison for the rest of my life, which is what my thought was. I was separated from my daughter, and so it helped me to sit quietly every morning so that I would not feel like such a horrible mother. My child had already lost her father, and now she did not have me. So I had to do something to make it so that I could see her for an hour every Saturday. The circumstances for men and women in prison haven't changed that much. So I'm not telling you a war story. But what I came to understand is that there is clarity inside a human heart, including mind. There is compassion. there is honesty, the ability to be honest with oneself, especially if one has caused harm. There was nothing called restorative justice practices then, but that's what that is. Being able to be responsible, accountable, and if, in fact, you have the opportunity to ask forgiveness. So I sat there day after day with myself, asking forgiveness even if the person wasn't, I didn't know where they were, or if they would ever see me again. There is so much to do inside ourselves to let go of the vestiges of all the isms we fight. And at some point, I realized the truth of the line in a Bob Marley song. This is half the line. None but ourselves can free our minds. I bet you can hum it and sing it. He was talking about freeing ourselves from mental slavery, racism and the fragility that comes with it, the inability to look at structures that hold racism in place, knowing that they may not cost any money to change, but not wanting to change them. We can free our minds from homophobia and specifically transphobia. Misogyny. We can free our minds by educating little boys and girls wherever we can. Education begins the moment we're born. It's certainly happening before then, but it begins when we're born. And so when I go into the elementary schools to talk about race, it is my favorite thing to do. Because the first graders say, well, I don't get it. You should just love everybody. If you got a sandwich, you could give somebody half of it. And the fifth graders say, racism is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. What has your skin got to do with who you are in your heart? But you see, we get educated, and we think we know it. And the children let me know I don't know. I just want to learn. So freeing ourselves from mental slavery, we let go of the need to control. But we don't wait until it's all a pretty picture and it's all fixed and done and wrapped in a bow, although that never really happens. We serve as we're learning. We're house cleaning as we serve. We're doing it all simultaneously, and we're continuing to be honest with ourselves. Then we can lead, because to lead is to serve. So pause once again and ask yourself this question. What one thing can I do to serve my world? This doesn't negate something you're already doing. Just what one thing can I do to serve the world I live in? And relax. And just sit for 30 seconds. Think about it. If you work here or teach here, you could also ask yourselves, what action can I take on this campus to serve this small chunk of world? And of course, what can I do beyond? Turn to somebody next to you and tell them what you came up with. And please look in front of you and behind you and to the sides of you so that you're not dismissing a human being. Okay, thank you. All right, so I think we have a mic runner, but I'd love to hear what you heard or said, or what someone else said.
If y'all want to talk, just raise your hand or give a wave so I know where to go.
Nobody wants to talk anymore. I see your hand back there. Raise your hand again so the person with the mic can see you. He's on this side over here. Okay, yes.
Hi.
Hi, Ericka.
Hi, Erica. we spell our names the same way. We bonded. I talked about continuing to spread love in my own way because God knows that it is so much harder to love some people than others. So just continuing to try to love those people.
Okay. Hi, Erica. My name's Erica, too. The third one. But over here we talked about using our talents to help our communities and also sharing our stories and using that as a way to help everybody.
When you say your community, do you mind me asking which one is at the top of your list?
My personal one is East Oakland.
Thank you. He was next, yes.
So there's been, a lot of talk about on the news, like whether or not how much, quote, identity politics are playing into people.
We're in a thread of conversation right now.
Oh.
And so what one thing can you do?
Well, at the very least, vote.
Vote.
Yeah,
You're
that's,
right.
That's the very least anyone here can do. Now I don't think we can afford not to. Even no matter how many loops we might have to go through, we just can't afford not to.
But it's always been that way, hasn't it?
Yeah, even if the candidates given aren't completely perfect, there's, some right now are clearly better than others, and we just have.
Well, thank you. I want to stop you, and I want to hear from you later because in a few minutes, we're going to just have dialogue, and you can bring your points up about the campus and identity politics a little later, okay? But thank you for saying you can vote. That's such a simple thing. It doesn't cost you any money. Remember, what's your name?
My name is William.
William, thank you. Just remember there are people who at some points weren't allowed to vote. And there are people here who have relatives in other states who are prevented from voting. So but I'm glad you brought it up because you said no matter what you have to do, now is the time, because the pool of voters not only put people in office, but they create the jury pool. And as we said in the 60s, we want a jury of our peers. So thank you for that, William. Thank you. Okay, who was over here? Yes.
I've been
Hi.
teaching, I'm Deja.
Yes.
I was a former student of yours.
Yes.
Teaching 9 years, my question was, or my thoughts are towards how do I support my students who are
We're still on what one thing
yes,
can you do?
Yes, exactly. Is how do I support the kids who don't have emotional strategies to help them cope with like things like they can't handle? Like that would be my thought.
So you
Like-
will
like-
create some way
Yes.
to work with your students so that they have coping strategies.
Like from the trauma that they've had and et cetera.
That's right. That's right. This is, thank you, Deja. This is one of the reasons why we have to cope with our own traumas. I don't know who was next, so. Hi, Miss Ericka. Hi.
I would be more
Generous in,
to people, sharing information that can make people cringe. Like, you need to be more generous to people about sharing information that they may not know, because some people are ignorant.
that's right.
Share and not be so stingy with information. Sometimes
Thank you.
people share it, feeling like we may not be heard.
Yes, you know, when you live in a world that has not for centuries considered you fully human, whoever you are, these are all kinds of identities that are treated in this way, then you begin retreating because you don't want your dreams, your sweet stories, your understanding stepped on and squashed like roaches. So you hold them in. So to be generous that's a leader. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Camille. In the future, I hope to just encourage training for educators and parents and organizers to better work with children and youth because they are the future and
Yes.
they should do it correctly. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you create such a training?
well, there's a lot of nonprofits now, at least
Mhm.
I know in East Oakland, that kind of just give educators and organizers information on the different stages of children's development,
Mhm.
resources, local resources.
And the development of identity,
Yes, that too.
and which is something I studied quite carefully in sociology, because if your identity development is based in you're a thug, you're a human, you're hoodlum, you don't come from nothing, you never gonna be nothing, your identity forms that way.
Yep.
But if you are in an environment that honors you and values you, your identity will form that way. It's real simple, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But we aren't always trained, and teachers are not always trained. So thank you for that one thing you want to do. And I hope it's not too far in the future. This side? Yes.
Hi, I wanted to share, had the opportunity to speak with Doris, and with her permission, she shared that her whole life is of service, that she is of service to her community, to her church, to her family, to her children, and that we ended on a note of me asking her, perhaps it sounds like, how can you be of service to yourself, to continue that. And so it felt like it resonated with some of the themes around self-care and service.
And so what's your takeaway from Doris?
I've just been thinking a lot about self-care and spiritual practice in terms of sustaining myself in this work. So it really resonated with me from a different perspective. But yeah.
Thank you. Somebody on this side. Yes.
Hi, Ericka. So my name is
Hi.
Victor, and
Hi, Victor.
so I have a cousin who went to prison for drug possession, and he was deported back to Colombia. He was undocumented at the time, like just last year. And so one thing I thought about to be of service to the world is to actually be a pen pal towards prisoners here in the United States, because, you know, for me personally, like, I want to be connected with someone who feels that they're alone in their own, like, in the own world of the prison that they're in, and to focus more on who they are as a person rather than what they did. Like, to me, it doesn't matter, like, you know, what their sentence is or like what they did that brought them there in the first place. And it's just kind of focused around the idea that they're human beings, not human doings. So just
Yes.
focusing on who they are as people.
Did you know there are many organizations that work with prisoners?
I've heard of a couple. There's the one in particular I know of called the Prisoner Literature Project that sends books to prisons all around the United States. So, you know, prisoners can like educate themselves and you know, keep themselves grounded in literature in times where, you know, they're in solitary confinement, or, you know, they need something to think about or, like, you know, reflect on while they're in prison.
And did you say your cousin was deported?
To Colombia, yes.
How is he?
He's doing well.
Good.
One of my close cousins actually, his daughter actually visits him about once a year, and every time like they post pictures, they always seem really happy. And a lot of my family in Colombia seem to, you know, be treating him very well. So
Thank you.
I'm happy for him, you know,
Thank
that
you.
he's with my family over there. But at the same time, you know, I wish he was here.
Yes. Well, thank you for caring for him in the way that you are. And it seems that that opened something in you about others who are alone or isolated or dismissed.
Right.
Our whole notion of immigrants is bizarre when we think about the fact that all of us are immigrants with the exception of the tribal peoples, on whose land we have built everything. And some of us are unwilling immigrants. Let's just be honest. And that did not happen in the span of humanity. 200 or 300 years is a short blip on the timeline. I just want to say, because I could just feel in the room when I was talking about slavery, that there are possibly people who believe, oh, that was so long ago. It's true in a way. However, there was no intervention. There was no apology. And now there's no acknowledgement in many places that it existed. And children, high school students told me this, that children are now being given textbooks that say the people who were stolen from Africa came as field workers. If you don't share your story, if you don't tell it from your heart, if you don't write it, somebody else will. So somebody here could stop those books or write one that antidotes the book, or do research and so on. Do you have a poem for us?
Hi, I'm Desmond Hatter. First, I just want to say thank you. This is like such an honor. Like, thank you, Ericka. Okay. I guess yeah. I'm a lover, not a fighter, but I hate being a writer because I fight with my emotions every time I get inspired. But I will always be a kid at heart, acting foolish, acting stupid, and dreaming lucid. From the start, this is just the way I do it. How I make beautiful music, turn around and say, hey, what's up, homie? That's code switch. I code switch quicker than your remote clicks. I change my ways as you change your station. I've been around the world. I'm accustomed to many flavors. The only danger is losing yourself in the commotion of trying to learn a language and make the payments without kissing the pavement. And if I make it, can I handle being famous? I ain't trying to change neither. I've been face to face with my demons. I'm just glad I could see them. Some of y'all blind, can't even see them creeping till they grab you by your neck and you ain't breathing. When you fight back, that's treason. That's what happens when you let somebody run your city. My inner conscience, it's a metropolis. But I'm about to get gentrified out here. My whole city's violent, and I'm the tyrant. But I keep it quiet. Real gangsters, we move in silence. I wish I died in 2012, like damn the Mayans making false prophecies. Like if you eat your broccoli, you'll be as tall as me. That's not how it works, though. Thank you very much.
When we shine, it just makes us happy, right? When we're allowed to shine, it makes us even happier. I asked him earlier if he was the only African-American man on campus. I was slightly joking, but then again, I wasn't. Because I know there are more African-American men on campus, but I'm not so sure about the faculty. I know that there is a large percentage of Latinx faculty and staff here, and students, and that is just so beautiful, understanding the whole country's fear of immigrants. It's not even hatred, it's fear. But I don't get it. What is the other thing? What excuses are we making? Do we make? Because the research is already all done. The blue ribbon committees have already said their piece. What do we do? I don't know. What do we do? So, you can just ask me any question you might like, or you can share something that's important to you as you have been doing, but I don't know how much time I have left. What time is it? So I have 10 minutes. Is that correct? So, so what do you want to talk about in addition to everything we've been talking about? Yes. Yeah, many of them. But I can tell you later. Yeah, many of them. Oh, yes, William wanted to ask his question about identity politics.
In the aftermath of the last election, there's been a lot of talk in the news about whether or not politics should be focused more on, quote, identity politics or not. I mean, there's a fear that, they could alienate some voters about whether or not, like focusing on specific issues.
What do you think, William?
Well, you see, ever since the 70s, the right's been trying to, put the whole Willie Horton thing on potential liberals, by just using the Black Panthers as like a smear thing, which forced, which then Democrats tried to avoid by the like the whole Bill Clinton and Sister Souljah thing, if you know what I mean.
I kind of know what you mean, but there are a lot of things you're saying. So, did you want me to comment, or did you just want to be heard?
Well, I mean, are identity politics a problem or not?
That's your question. Okay. So I see, for me, when something becomes a term that gets used colloquially, I stop using it.
But aren't identity politics not
What-
civil rights?
Yes. And more importantly, human rights. If I am powerful enough to make policy change, and then furthermore, city guidelines and protocols that kept everybody named William from going to college, that would impact you very directly. It's your human right to receive education. And I think sometimes this is a word I think I created, cerebralize life. And who you are should not be at issue for what you can attain. Not who you are. And so I don't know what identity politics means when it comes to human beings. I just know that in this one body, I am a woman. Pardon me, I am a biological woman. I am a mother. I fit somewhere in the queer spectrum. I am able-bodied at this time. I went to school. I went to prison. I went to college. I got a master's degree. I consider myself African American because my ancestors are from somewhere in Africa. And my immediate family, all of them, are from the United States. That's not about civil rights, just saying who I am. That's who I am. How I'm treated becomes something about my civil rights if any part of me is managed in a way that is to my detriment. And so I use myself to describe so many people here. So that when I get passed over in a hiring committee, William, I have to wonder why. Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it because I'm 6 feet tall? I have to wonder why. Because I live in a world that sends people to the margins, that sends people down holes, that passes over people because of how they look, the texture of their hair, the shape of their eyes, the color of their skin. So I don't use the term identity politics. I know what it means. There's another one, respectability politics. There are all these terms that are out there, but they mean nothing if we're not doing anything to shift something right in front of us that needs shifting. So that's how I wanted to answer your question, but thank you for asking. And did anybody else have a question?
And just in the shift, one of the first
you guys.
One of the first things, I had class as an undergrad, and we walked in, and Ericka asked, who here works? And there was all kinds of us who work. And then she said, who here's a mom? And I raised my hand, and like 2 other people in class raised their hand. And you acknowledged that I was a mom, too. And nobody had ever done that. So just shifting, right? Remembering that we're people.
That's
that
right.
Right there first.
That's right. That's right, because we are. Not everybody comes from, here's your tuition. I am so happy that I might be able to do that for a grandchild someday. So it's not about, there's not something wrong with privilege. My mother was blind. I always share this. She was blind toward the end of her life, and she'd say, "Sugar, don't you ever take that sight of yours for granted." And I promised her I never would. But she was talking about the privilege of having sight, to be mobile, to clearly think at this time. And so to be a mom is a precious thing, yet in our society, if a student is a mom, we're like, whoa. And some students work 2 or 3 jobs. So it's to come out of our bubble is what this is all about. It's not about anybody being wrong or bad. And I'm sure that I triggered some allergies in the room. I apologize. I apologize if I did. But the sneezing and coughing lets you know that you need to treat it. Another question, or, oh yes. And what's your name again?
Haley.
Haley?
Yes.
Like the comment?
Yes.
Whoa.
My
Okay.
question to you, since you were involved with the Black Panther Party, where do you feel we as people of color need to take social justice now versus then?
Where do we need to take it?
Where do you think it should go now? And what
Personally.
Mm-hmm.
That's my answer. Personally. Take it personally. Do something. Every single person do something. Regardless of the body you're born into, the skin you're in, the skills and talents you have, the place you live, do something. Do something, and it can be simple. No one has to know the generous or kind thing you've done, but do it. You know, step out of yourself. And I think that I've lived in this country all my life, although I've traveled around the world, but I want to say that we tend to be, of all the places I've been, one of the most amazing countries, and yet one of the most immature in a way. And I want to say that, you know, what we consider to be challenging quite often really isn't. When I paused, I was thinking about a visit to Johannesburg, where apartheid did not end. If you think something can end in 25 years, it's all still in place. It's all still in place. And that doesn't mean that some change didn't occur. So what can we do? We can not be so much about striking out at a moving target. For instance, with my 3 friends, Alicia Garza, Opal Temezi, and Patrice Cullors, they didn't create Black Lives Matter. They were chatting one day by text about yet another young Black person who'd been killed, and they were in tears. And one of them, I don't remember which of the 3, texted, "Black Lives Matter." And then what happened? Everybody and their brother was, well, should we change the last one, the word? Should we change the first word to all? Should we? Why don't they have a plan? Well, don't they need leadership? Well, Why couldn't it just be itself? Why do we attack rather than acting? What is that about us? And I don't have any disregard for social media, but when I taught online, I learned something about not being able to see one's face and people not being able to see you, that you say stuff that you wouldn't be brave enough to say if the person was in front of you. So I think that we could check that. That's something we can do. We could use social media for upliftment. I think we can, what's right in front of us. How many of you are from Oakland? Or San Francisco? Or New York City? Or any big city in the Atlanta? Any big city in the country? Have you noticed the growth of homeless settlements everywhere? If everybody in this room organized a team of 3, 1, 2, 3, to go to the nearest homeless settlement and take some food, or read to children, or help an elder. Everybody is in these settlements, and some of them in Oakland are so huge that the city has placed porta potties in them. And that is not funny. We just need to help where we are. I'll tell you one more story, and to your point, there is this woman who you know how people confuse you with somebody else? I'm not going to explain that any further. This particular woman looks like she could be my sister or cousin, but she's actually from the Middle East, okay? But she does look like me, and our hair is the same color. And I see her, and one day we made friends around this funny thing that keeps happening. And one day we were talking, and I said, "What one thing are you doing?" I was collecting what one things that people were doing. And she said, "I live and in front of my house there is a bus stop." I said, "Yeah?" She said, "And there is an elder man who's homeless. And Ericka, he's African American." And she said, "You know I'm not." And I said, "Yes, I know." And she said, "I eat 3 meals. So when I cook, I go to the bus stop and I give him food." That so touched me. It brought tears to my eyes, and I hugged and I thanked her for doing that one thing. I wish it would be on the 6 o'clock news, but I know it's not. And then I saw her months later because I had been traveling, and I said, "Hi, how's the man?" She said, "Oh, he's gone." But 3 of them replaced him. So she's unafraid of the humans in her world. I eat, I cook, so I give him a meal. I just wanted to share that. There's so many things we can do. Young girls need you. Oakland has the highest rate of sex-trafficked girls, statistics, African American between 11 and 16 years old. And we think it's Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia. Not anymore. There might have been one. Oh, you had your hand up. So can I take this last?
Yes. Sorry. Thank you for that last question. So my name is Sue Kana, and I'm really excited to talk to you. Thank you for the opportunity. We had a breakout today, and we talked about organizing and faith-based organizing, and I've been thinking about like how to frame this the entire time you were talking about leaders and how they deal with adversity. And in organizing, I'm sure that you've talked about this a lot, we focus on relationship building with those who are different from you, with the other, to make those bridges. And a lot of times that can be really exhausting and really draining willing to make yourself vulnerable, time and time again with other communities, and sometimes be met with ignorance and maybe good-hearted ignorance where they're not trying to offend you, but there's some microaggressions. I'm just wondering, yeah, I do. How do you recommend you stay resilient in those cases? And knowing that organizing is a lot about that, what do you do to keep yourself going in the face of all that kind of adversity?
Thank you. And because I'm giving the mic back, that doesn't mean I don't want to answer you, but I really want them to know that I'm done. And the way that I do it is not spend time, all of my time, and I said this earlier with a small group of people, and give up all of my cognitive and heart spaces to people who need that much work. I balance, I set boundaries, and I do the best I can, and I think well of others, but I don't put myself intentionally in harm's way. And I focus on the people as much as I can who are willing to step forward together. I think that might be a better, is that helpful to you? So helpful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ericka, for that inspiring presentation. Let's give her another round of applause. It is now more important than ever for us to make ourselves a priority. So we invite you to translate the learning from our conference today into action for the common good.
Thank you all for coming to the 2017 Leadership for Social Justice Conference. And thank you once again to Ericka. And thank you for engaging in dialogue. It is moments like these where I really learn and understand the power of words. We greatly appreciate each of you taking the time to reflect and grow with us today. And we hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.